So I feel like it will shock nobody if I say that fashion is not a sustainable industry. For years now, brands have relied on churning out more and more clothing, and the quality of the clothing itself has been going rapidly downhill as brands put profit over everything else. But even before that, fashion has been known as an industry that is so averse to change that it would be laughable if it wasn't so painful. Despite this fact, or maybe because of it, the industry attracts a lot of people who care about the planet and care about sustainability, who soon find themselves caught between their sustainability values and ethics and doing a job in an industry built off selling newness. I want to talk about what you can do if you're finding yourself in this position. Maybe you're already working at a company and you've slowly been realizing your role in the overconsumption machine that is fashion. Or maybe you've always wanted to work in fashion and you're reaching the point where you're deciding your field of study or your first entry job, and it's kind of becoming hard to know where you should go and if you should enter the industry if you do care about fashion, which is actually the case for the subscriber who reached out and asked my advice, which sparked this video. They're trying to figure out how to balance wanting to work in fashion with caring about ethics and sustainability, and whether that means they should be working in the industry at all. Honestly, although this was a very specific example, I feel like this sentiment is echoed in so many different people. Sustainability has been a growing topic for years now. More of us than ever feel worried about where our planet is heading and what we should be doing to mitigate some of the effects of climate change, and how industries like fashion are accelerating that path rather than taking the steps they should be to slow it down. Yeah, I don't feel like this particular situation is talked about a lot. When I went to Google what to do if you care about sustainability and work in fashion, absolutely nothing came up. And I feel like it's really a missing conversation that is so important, but we seem to not be having. So I kind of wanted to dedicate a whole video into breaking down the topic and talking about how I think it is actually an issue that a lot of us are facing. Also include some of my advice and some of the advice you guys gave when I did a call out post for this video, which thank you guys for contributing to. And also a little bit of background into my work in the industry, because actually this topic hits home for me a lot and I kind of haven't really talked about it on my channel yet. So I feel like this would be a good time to share. So let's just get into it. Like I said, I feel like this is an issue that would affect a lot more people than we might initially think. I mean, outside of the fashion industry, any field which is continually pushing newness and overconsumption will probably contain a massive percentage of people that feel like their job conflicts with their sustainability values. I think this is a particular struggle for the younger generation. I mean, when I was first coming into fashion, I wasn't as aware as I am about the environment now, and I don't know how that would have impacted me about my first choice of job. And I can imagine for the people who are just going into university or just starting out their careers, who have probably a lot more knowledge of the impact of fashion on the environment than most of us did when we started out in the industry, it would feel like a really hard step to go into a job in fashion, knowing what you know. Equally though, I can imagine for so many people who have already started their careers in fashion and are, 5, 10, 15 years into the job, it must also be a really hard situation to be slowly waking up to the impact of fashion and knowing that in some ways you have contributed to that with what you were doing. I think the assumption is that the people working in fashion can't care about the environment, or when they're doing their jobs, they just fully disassociate and switch off that part of them that cares. I definitely don't believe that this is the case for a lot of people. However, I can kind of see this side of it. I think an interesting thing is to relate it to the attitude behavior gap that we see with shopping behaviors online, where people say they care about sustainability, but their purchasing patterns don't reflect that, and kind of link it to how this might come out in the workforce. Maybe people care about sustainability and try to embody that in their personal lives, but that doesn't translate to where they work for whatever reason. Maybe one of which is feeling like your individual actions in your role don't matter compared to the overall raging machine of fashion. I don't know, and I haven't found any studies that look specifically at the people working in fashion and whether they have this same attitude behavior gap, but I feel like it would be very interesting. And if I had to make a guess, I think the stats maybe would show this. Like I was saying though, I definitely don't think that this is the case for the majority of people who are working in fashion but who still care about the environment. I think from my own experience, it is just a struggle that you kind of have to deal with every day. Sometimes it might feel less burdensome than others, but fashion is an industry that just constantly reminds you of how wasteful it is. And reading some of your replies to my call out for this video definitely just reaffirms that belief. I mean, I haven't worked in a role for a brand for a while now, but from my experiences before and from some of your responses, it seems that even at brands that promise to be sustainable, it's an industry standard for brands to make out like they care more than they actually do, especially when it comes to the consumer side of the business, like marketing, where they know that consumers are caring more about sustainability commitments and they want to look like they're doing more than they are. It can feel pretty gross to be on the inside of that and see exactly how brands are fudging their words or, leaving something out in order to convince the consumer that something is better than it is. But especially if you've made the effort to pick a sustainable brand because it aligns with your own values, it's hard to see the brand then taking on these tactics. One thing we all know about the fashion industry as an operation of capitalism is that it will put profit above all else. And in a system like that, which has decided that money matters more than our impact on the planet, and pushing polyester clothing is a better short-term solution to profits than investing in long-term solutions, it's almost impossible for sustainability to survive. Even in sections of the industry that you might think are sustainable, I think this profit over ethics is still so prevalent. For example, I was speaking to my friend Mel from the substack Caught Green-Handed about this issue, and she was telling me about her experiences working with resale platforms and clothes swap brands and how she still struggled with the feeling of going against her sustainability beliefs. Mel said something really interesting to me. She said that working out how to juggle her love of fashion and her love for the environment has been the defining question of her career. And I immediately resonated with that. Mel said she struggled with the fact that the metric of success in her job, working with clothes swaps and resale platforms, was still sales, and that she still felt pushed to employ traditional fashion marketing tactics and get people to buy as much as possible, relying on discounts and sales, etc., in order to do well at her job, which didn't sit well even if the clothing was more sustainable than buying something firsthand. Ultimately, it left Mel having to find a different career in fashion, and I feel like this is the predominant path for so many of us that feel the same. I got tons of comments from people saying they had to drop out of the industry when they found themselves conflicted about their jobs, and I totally get that, seeing as it was part of the reason I left the fashion industry too a couple of years ago and started down this path instead, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this whole video, because like I said, I haven't really got into this on my channel yet about why I left, and I feel like this is a good video to do that. Just like the subscriber whose first comment sparked this video, I knew that I wanted to work in fashion when I was young. I had a real interest in it. And I went to university to study journalism. I did a lot of internships in the fashion industry and interviews in the fashion industry while I was there. And then when I graduated, I worked in marketing for various sustainable brands. And it just became a constant struggle seeing how my role was so centered around pushing newness, pushing consumption, whilst knowing that that was the exact opposite of what we needed in the sustainability movement. And it got to the point where it became one of the major factors for me in leaving the role and starting this journey of creating a YouTube channel and talking about fashion's problems outside of the industry. Whilst this has definitely helped the guilt I was feeling and no longer feels like it's conflicting with my interest in sustainability, I am still struggling to navigate this new path as a content creator, especially when it comes to being approached for brand partnerships. You guys would not believe the amount of emails I get from fast fashion companies and drop shipping sites asking me to push them on this channel, which I know must be automated, because if they even saw 5 minutes of one of my videos, they would know I'm the last person to accept. But this becomes a slightly harder thing to navigate when it comes to brands that aren't as obviously unsustainable, and I might even shop myself as a consumer. For example, without going into too many details because I can't really, I recently had a situation where I was discussing a paid partnership with a sustainable brand for this channel, which would have been my first paid partnership. But as I was signing the paperwork and getting ready to film the advertisement slot to put in one of my videos, the brand came out with their Black Friday campaign, and I was just so put off by it. Again, I can't go into details, but it just felt very like pushing consumption, which is not something I want to do at all. And I was quite shocked that the brand had done it. I hadn't actually seen them do massive sales before. So I ended up going back to them and said, I wasn't aware that this was now part of your marketing tactics, and I'm actually no longer comfortable with the partnership, which was really hard for me. I'd actually signed some paperwork and I didn't know how they were going to take it. But I thought it was so important for me to pull out once I realized that the brand didn't actually have the same values as me with sustainability. It definitely felt like a risk, especially because I'm quite a small creator, and burning bridges and turning down quite a bit of money, which, you know, as I said, would have been my first partnership, felt like I was taking a step back rather than a step forward, I guess. But I knew that if I'd taken the money, I would have felt this like pit in my stomach that I wasn't promoting the right thing to this community that I've built here on this channel. So yeah, that's something I've had to deal with recently. And it's something that I'm thinking about more and more, how I'm going to navigate monetizing this channel in the future and figure out how to make this channel profitable without pushing messages that I don't want to push. And I know that for some of you, you're in a similar situation of maybe wanting to start a channel yourself, whilst knowing that the YouTube culture is partnering with brands in order to be profitable, and how to navigate that. Honestly, I don't know. I'm just sort of working it out as I go. Anyway, I feel like it's time we move on to the advice section of this video, how I feel like you can navigate caring about sustainability and working in fashion, what you guys said you do currently in your roles to help, and yeah, just kind of get some practical, actionable advice. I feel like this part of the video is going to be so important because obviously, though we've spoken about how a lot of people do end up quitting their jobs, it's definitely a privilege that some people can't afford to do. And for many, the idea of putting their morals about sustainability over putting food on the table just isn't an option. And it definitely isn't the only option. So hopefully, if you're feeling like you're in that situation where you can't leave, something here will be useful to you. Even aside from financial reasons, I definitely am not encouraging people to quit their job in fashion if they care about sustainability. On the contrary, I feel like the more people who care about sustainability who are in these roles, the better it will be for furthering progress. If I had to do my entire journey all over again, I definitely would, because not only did I learn so much about the industry and about how they approach sustainability, I feel like I made a difference there and I contributed ideas, which is kind of my first advice point. If you care about sustainability and you're working in the fashion industry, you can create change from the inside. Maybe this is keeping up with news and innovations and pitching them to your boss or boss's boss as something the company could get involved with. Equally, if you have a sustainability department in your job that you don't currently work in, sending this information to them, or maybe just chatting to them and getting their ideas and sharing your own, could be a really good way to make sure that you're staying on top of stuff and that they know you're interested in this role should any open spots become available. You can also ask your company for training courses in sustainability. Brands often have money for employee initiatives like this set aside, and not only would you be learning more about sustainability, you would be supporting the companies that are putting on these workshops and trying to create change. Another thing you could do if you're working in the social media or customer facing roles is keep a log of when customers ask you about your sustainability initiatives or ask you about the sustainability of your products. And in a very nice way, you could package this up and send it to your boss saying, like, clearly consumers want to know what we're doing. What can I tell them? Can I tell them we're trying to do XYZ? Or maybe frame it as maybe we're losing out on customers because they don't feel like we're properly addressing our impact. And obviously, I'm not saying go guns blazing towards your higher ups and get yourself fired for going on about an issue that they might not care about. But I think there is something to be said in creating a bit of pressure with your bosses and your higher ups and kind of making it known that you as an employee care about sustainability, if only to kind of warn them that their workforces care about what the company is doing, and that if there were a major scandal, say, or like a big blow up in the media, employees might go on record to say that they'd put forward sustainability initiatives or voice their concerns about the company and had been shot down. Obviously, this isn't going to happen in any case, but what kind of comes to mind for me is the recent Nike scandal where it came out that they were slashing sustainability roles. And I know they interviewed a couple of employees for that story too and came out with some interesting tidbits. One thing I think is so important, especially when you take a step back and look at fashion as the massive industry it is focusing on your individual actions and what you can do in your role to make small changes. Kind of like how us as consumers can take small changes that add up to big change when it becomes collective. You as an employee can take small steps that might not seem like they have a lot of impact, but do make a difference in some way. For example, I had someone write into my call out for this video who said that they're currently a sales advisor, and one of the ways they balance their ethics over job role is to not push the customers they're helping towards buying more or buying a specific thing. They simply just answer their questions and talk to them about the products, but they kind of stop when it comes to being very, very pushy towards the final purchase and give customers that room to think for themselves as to whether they want this product or not. And I think actually, even though that seems like a very small step, collectively that could add up to a lot of products that don't get sold needlessly. I also think there's something to be said in just allowing yourself grace. Like we've mentioned, quitting your job is not something that is available to everyone. And maybe if you're in a toxic work environment, voicing your concerns about sustainability may not be an option either. So I think it's super important to take a step back and, like I said, see fashion as a raging machine and that no one blames you for having to do your job. Like, it brings to mind, for example, the online discourse that always happens when we talk about fast fashion, where it turns into, is this a individual person's responsibility to stop consuming fast fashion, or is it the brand's responsibility to clean up their act? And I'm kind of in both camps. I'm definitely more leaning towards it's a brand's issue to have to clean up their acts. But at no point in my mind am I thinking it is the individual responsibility of this employee in the social media team to stop pushing the sale, or it's this person's issue in the product development team to stop using polyester. I think we have to use our common sense here to know that when we blame brands for their impact on the environment, we're actually blaming the CEOs and the shareholders and the ones that directly benefit from profits being up and quality of clothing being down. And so are pushing the message of produce and sell as much as possible to the rest of the team. My last kind of tips are probably good for if you're just starting out your career or you're considering a career change, because one of the things I think you could do that might make a big impact in how you feel about your role in fashion is working for a smaller company that is not, a fast fashion conglomerate, or working for an experimental brand that you feel is doing good in the industry. Like, for example, working at Garni would be a dream come true for me, even for just a few months, because I feel like the work they do there is pushing the industry forward, despite the fact that they are also a brand which is creating new products. The other tip is to look at different areas of the fashion industry that maybe aren't quite so focused on the creating and the selling to consumers. Like, for example, if you're wondering what you should study, or you're wondering if you want a career change, considering going into areas like personal styling, where you could help people find clothes they love so that they're not purchasing as much, or going into conservation, say, so you're working with exhibitions and museums to preserve fashion and push the narrative that it's an art form to be admired rather than a commodity to go through relentlessly. Obviously, of course, there's fashion journalism, which was my dream and now part of what I do, and help expose some of the issues in the the industry and call for change. I'm sure there are so many different roles like this that I'm missing, so definitely comment below if I am, just to give people ideas about what they could look into if they want to work in fashion but might not know where to start. Anyway, I hope this video has been interesting. I hope it starts a discussion about how many of us might feel the pressures of sustainability in our capitalist society and how we might all better cope with it, or at least acknowledge it, I guess. And yeah, if I've missed out any tips that you feel are good, feel free to comment them below. I'd love to hear them. And yeah, I hope you have a lovely day and this was helpful, and I'll speak to you really soon. Bye.